I saw on Twitter that Mehdi Hassan posted a video of what Ben Shapiro was saying about January 6th right after it happened, literally the day after it happened. And talking about how it was the worst thing that's happened to America since 9/11. And Ben Shapiro is a great example of one of these figures who hates Trump. He clearly hates Trump. He made it clear that he hates Trump. And that as soon as Trump came into power, he immediately switched to defending Trump, running cover for Trump, and trying to downplay the badness of Trump. And that's where, to me, it goes so far beyond normal political hypocrisy, right? Because there's like, oh, my candidate's doing something bad, and I call it out when the other candidate does it, but not when my candidate does it. That's normal political hypocrisy. It's bad. But in the case of somebody like Ben Shapiro and some other people on the right, I don't want to give them too much credit, but there's some of them, that they genuinely recognize how bad Trump is for America. Like, to say that January 6th is the worst thing to happen to America since 9/11, I mean, I guess it depends on what your metric is. I would say COVID is probably by far the worst thing that happened to America since 9/11. But if you're talking about a political event, there's an argument for that. And it just shows that he recognizes the seriousness of that happening. But then because it's politically convenient to switch to downplaying the seriousness of it, which is what he's doing now, talking about how people are not as motivated by January 6th as Democrats wanted, and don't view it as bad of a thing, or Trump as for Trump as being as responsible for it as he was, which is true. I mean, those the amounts of people, the polling on that does not show that it's like a super animating force. But if anything, that's because of the Fox Newses and the Daily Wires out there downplaying it. And the reason they're doing that is not because they believe it. It's because they know Trump will crush them if they go against him, and they're just fucking cowards. And I don't understand why a guy like Ben Shapiro, obviously just besides the fact that he does what he does for money and doesn't really care about anything else other than that, but I just don't get why you would... it's just selling out, And if you're going to sell out, then why would you ever make it clear that you don't like Trump in the first place? Why would you ever, ho-hum about January 6th in the first place if you're just going to make yourself look like a fucking idiot later by completely reversing course on that? That's the thing I don't understand about him. There's other commentators that are smart enough to not take positions against Trump because they don't want to make themselves look like idiots later. And although they are still idiots, the Charlie Kirks, they are the ones who come out looking stronger because they look more consistent, even though they probably feel the exact same way as Ben. They're just going along with Trump because he's the one to go along with right now.
Yeah, I agree definitely that COVID was the worst thing to happen to America, but in the sense of specifically just America, whereas COVID was a worldwide problem or whatever. It probably was. If we were looking at just things for America specifically, I mean, I guess I could make the argument that Trump being elected was, but what he says in that too is talking about how bad it was for our sense of democracy and this and that. And it's funny to say it's sense of democracy because it seems to be being chipped away more and more. I and a lot of people used to be under the opinion that everything was pretty much just rigged with the presidential elections, and to an extent it is, as in, not anyone can become president. You're going to have to be rich. You're going to have powerful friends. You're going to have to go through a lot of things. And the one thing about Trump being elected that I took away from it at the time that was amazing to me was that shit wasn't that rigged, because when he won the primary, it shocked a lot of Republicans too, especially like old head Republicans. They didn't want him to be president any more than the Democrats did. And you talk about like Ben Shapiro clearly doesn't like him. A lot of them don't. But like you said, they're cowards, so they're hiding behind it and just going with the flow and, relaying the party message, whatever it is, even if they know this guy's horrible and they just kind of got to go with it because they're scared of being crushed by him. I wanted to, after we started talking about him saying that about January 6th, I looked up Ben Shapiro hypocrisy because I wanted to see what other things he's, flipped on completely. that he's been called out for in the media or said publicly and stuff, because I haven't seen too many. He seems to pretty much stay on the message of being a little twat. But looking up Ben Shapiro Hypocrisy made me discover something I'm sure you already knew about, but I had no idea. He released a rap song called Hip Hop Hypocrisy with Tom MacDonald. Holy shit. I didn't listen to it. I won't listen to it. But that has to be like, I mean, Tom MacDonald and Ben Shapiro, could it possibly get any worse?
Oh, yeah. I remember when that happened. I actually did a second round of releasing the Rap Grifters video when that came out. Because that was, I think, the most relevance Tom MacDonald ever had. He kind of borrowed some relevance from Ben Shapiro there. And what was funny to me about that and the release of that song, I never listened to it either. I think I heard some stupid clips of it or something. Definitely don't listen to it. Best to just leave that shit off. But I remember that song got a bunch of big attention. And a lot of these right-wing guys, especially people who make music, Tim Pool has released some music as well. And anytime there's like pro-Trump, MAGA rap music that comes out or whatever, what happens is it goes number one on iTunes. And people, these right-wing people celebrate that like it's their dominance of the culture. We're going number one on iTunes and we can blah, blah, blah. But that's because they can buy their own music. So they can, they've figured out how to inflate their own numbers through iTunes by buying a bunch of their own music. And that's exactly what happened with that song with Tom MacDonald and Ben Shapiro is they inflated the number so it went number one on iTunes. And they're like, oh yeah, look at this cultural dominance of conservative hip hop, blah, blah, blah. And so I was talking about it. I was putting shit out. That's when I had a couple clips about Tom MacDonald from the Rap Grifters video that went low-key viral. Not crazy, but, got some numbers. And it was interesting because Tom MacDonald kept saying, it's going to go number one. We're going to go number one on Billboard. It's going to be number one. And then it just never did. Like, after the Billboard numbers came out that week, I just never heard another peep about it. Because I think they actually tricked themselves into thinking that, buying their own music and having a bunch of other conservative entities buy the music to inflate its visibility in iTunes doesn't actually equate to real numbers. And, nothing he's doing is getting anywhere close to the type of numbers that you have to do to be on Billboard. And that's still with people not selling many records nowadays. But it's like, these are people who are on the radio, people who have real fan bases, people who have real excitement around their songs, and Tom MacDonald, because they're so cynical about the music industry, oh, it's all just fake, these are all just inflated, blah, 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 which is kind of true. It's like a fraction true. But they think that because of that, they can just inflate their own numbers and become the biggest forces in hip-hop and music. And it's like, no, dude, no. People don't like that stupid-ass shit that you're putting
out. Wow, that's amazing to me that even with them inflating the numbers, they hit number one on iTunes. They must have spent a lot of money. I guess, too, a lot of the legitimate sales on iTunes, it's telling that that's where they're coming from is iTunes. Because, that is pretty out of date. People still use iTunes, of course. But, most people were listening to music on Spotify, YouTube Music. I don't know. I don't know too many people buying music on iTunes these days. I guess it still exists. But it's kind of telling. It's like how the number one selling CDs are always like country music CDs. Not because country music's the most popular music. Just because, those kind of people are the only ones still buying CDs. It's amazing he made that rap, though. Because isn't he the one who said rap isn't music? He had some fucking asinine thing he was saying about how, well, my father, whose genitals are just as dry as my wife's, he is a music theory major, and he taught me that there are three things to music: rhythm, melody, and I don't even remember what he said. Rhythm, melody, and harmony maybe are the three components of music, and that rap is only fulfills one of those three things, so it's not music, it is rhythmic speaking. I don't know if that was somehow related to the song. Maybe that's why it's called Hip Hop Hypocrisy. Maybe he changed his mind about it. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. But if it's not, I just find it really funny that he then later went and made a rap with Tom MacDonald, of all people. Of course it was Tom MacDonald.
Yeah, he definitely was pretty big on that whole rap is not music thing. He was doing this whole thing where he was breaking down Future and Cardi B lyrics on his show and just like scoffing at them. He did the same thing with Imagine by John Lennon. And I think it's part of Ben Shapiro's broader vision to be not only doing cultural critique, but from an angle that anybody gives a fuck about. And so, I think that they've manufactured that pretty effectively, but I don't think that he ever got super far with the whole rap is not music thing or all that. But that's why it was so disgusting for Tom MacDonald to work with him, because that was Tom MacDonald's song. He featured Ben Shapiro on the song, and they were trying to troll, they're trying to be funny, whatever. But the people who engage with that and think it's funny and think it's not that serious will never understand that, like, it goes deep when you're having a dude who, like, openly disrespects the culture of hip-hop. Tom MacDonald and Ben Shapiro both do that. And then you're going to put him on a rap song. It's just a mockery. You're just making a mockery. And that's ultimately why it never goes anywhere outside of you spending your own money to inflate the numbers. Because it's like, there's just not an appetite for that. You know what I mean? Like, you can maybe get some outrage clicks, but like, it's not good art and it's not good commentary. It just sucks. And that's also why conservatives will never be counterculture, because all they do is hold everything to a standard of like purity, like cultural purity, and all they ever do is point downward and blame the poorest people possible for all the problems in culture. And that's the opposite of what counterculture is, and they prove it every time they're faced with something that is actual counterculture. They spit on it and disrespect it.
I swear, every time you mention conservatives thinking they're counterculture, I do a spit take or laugh out loud, whatever's going on. It gets a physical reaction out of me because it is so hilarious. It is one of the only things I can just purely laugh at from the Republicans rather than laugh and be very sad about. But I looked up Ben Shapiro again, trying to see if he did any interviews today or released anything, maybe talking about J6 and what happened. Maybe, I know in the past I compared it to 9/11, and I've changed my stance on that, but it's been 4 years. A lot of things have come out, and new things have come to light, and I see things differently now. There's this and that, and then I've been started listening. But no, he doesn't even do that, or at least he hasn't that I was able to find today. Of course, he's not going to, talk about taking in new information and analyzing it and then growing as a person. That's not something that's in his wheelhouse. But what I did find was apparently he was a guest on the Megyn Kelly show today. And I'm not too familiar with her. I've heard her name. I don't really know much about her. I guess she's just a right-wing talking head. She seems to have a popular show, so I don't know. But I watched the first few minutes of it. It was hard to watch past that without grabbing some cotton balls, dipping them in gasoline, shoving them in my ears, and lighting them on fire. But I listened to as much of it as I could without doing that. And immediately she starts talking about January 6th. And she's like, the J6 people, blah, blah, blah. Oh, now I'm doing Shapiro for her voice. But any Republican, I end up doing that. She started talking about how the left wants to compare J6 to 9/11 and how ridiculous that is right away. And like, Ben Shapiro's in the little talking head window next door, just blinking the whole time, not chiming in, or even doing a little like sheepish smile or acknowledge that, since he's one of the people who did that originally. Doesn't say anything about it. She goes on and on about how the left wants to always bring up January 6th and Trump is a traitor to the country and this and that, but they don't want to talk about the BLM, I guess she calls it BLM, she can't say Black Lives Matter, riots, she can't say protests, and 2,000 people were hurt and this and that, and talking about other protests and riots and this and that and all this stuff. But, oh no, all they want to focus on is January 6th. And it's like, well, those things definitely should always be talked about and remembered. And we need to look at them and learn and grow. But this one is a lot more relevant. And what we're talking about here is the person who incited it becoming president. Like, it's clearly an entirely different thing. And he, Ben Shapiro can't call her out on that for sure. He's not going to do that. So what does he do? Doesn't acknowledge his own hypocrisy. Doesn't say, well, this is a little bit different. I think he just goes into, well, of course, they have to. That's all they have left. Blah, blah, blah. And starts talking about how because he was elected again, that people calling him a totalitarian dictator and this and that, it just doesn't ring the same anymore. He was elected, blah, blah, blah. And he mentioned something about Joe Biden shooting himself in the foot when he basically said all Republicans are the enemy and this and that. And it's like, dude, he kind of alluded to that, but Trump literally talks about sicking the military on the left. So what exactly is your point there?